I just finished a book called The Hillbilly Elegy by Vance I want to talk about a little bit. So this is my book review this week. Hillbilly Elegy. Just a quick synopsis. It's a story about a guy growing up in southwestern Ohio. His family, his grandparents had actually moved across the border from eastern Kentucky into western Ohio, getting away from the coal mines and moving to what they had hoped would be a better life. But they were hillbillies, Scotch-descended hillbillies from eastern Kentucky in the coal mines, and they grew up as hillbillies. Well, what does hillbillies really mean? You know, he spends 3/4 of the 257 pages talking about growing up hillbilly. And, you know, most of what I got out of the growing up were, you know, dysfunctional parent situations, dysfunctional families. Wow, really just kind of horrible living conditions from my perspective. But he discovered something that he defines right toward the end of the book called ACEs. And this is defined by some sociologists called adverse childhood experiences. And these ACEs contribute to how a person reacts to situations and how they grow up and perpetuate these situations of, you know, a revolving door of father figures in his life, you know, where his mother had been married 5 times and many relationships that didn't turn into marriages, where he didn't really have a father figure in his life, on and on and on. You know, but in reading some of the ACEs that he experienced, and I want to find a test about this because he refers to a test that he basically shared with some of his family and others to see if how they scored. Did they have adverse childhood experiences that might affect them in adulthood? You know, some of the things that he mentions were being sworn at, insulted, and humiliated by his parents, being pushed, grabbed, or having something thrown at you, feeling that your family didn't support each other, having parents who were separated or divorced, living with an alcoholic or drug user, living with someone who was depressed or attempted suicide, watching a loved one be physically abused. And that's just a few things on the list. I know that I can relate with some of those things. So in that, I related to his situation a little bit, you know, growing up. But one of the big things that I for sure relate to is some of the stuff I related to you earlier in my money video is growing up not believing that there was really ever enough money for me and for the things that I needed and wanted in my life. And that goes on into my 50s. I never feel like there's enough money for things that I want or need. I strive to provide for my family and have them not feel that way, but I don't know if I've been successful because I'm sure they hear me complain about money sometimes. Another thing that I got out of this book, which was very profound to me. I have to pause for a second. All right, I had to pause there for a second. Another big takeaway that I got from this that I related to was his method of dealing with relationship conflicts or relationships at all. In growing up, he learned basically to run away anytime that there was a relationship conflict, because in his household people would scream at each other and things would be thrown and physical violence was kind of commonplace. So either you needed to stand up and fight, or you needed to retreat. So he got into a relationship and married, and found that he didn't know how to deal with relationships. Anytime there was any question, he would basically just avoid a resolution. Where his wife grew up in a much more healthy, non-confrontational household and was prepared to discuss openly things that needed to be addressed, rather than treat their partner as an adversary and either fight or retreat. So it was kind of wonderful to see, because in my own life, you know, I didn't grow up like a hillbilly, but at the same time, I don't know that I ever really learned how to deal with things that come up in a relationship. I will do almost anything to avoid the conflict. That was a big takeaway for me in this book. So even though I didn't grow up hillbilly, and I don't really remember screaming matches with my parents, I do remember quite a bit of conflict with my parents, and then our parents got divorced. We have a mother that had, when I was growing up, was drugged and passed out a lot on her drugs, and then she married someone with an alcohol problem. You know, so who knows, maybe there's some ACEs in my background. I'm going to read a paragraph from the book. It says, "Children with multiple ACEs are more likely to struggle with anxiety and depression, to suffer from heart disease and obesity, and to contract certain types of cancers. They're also more likely to underperform in school and suffer from relationship instability as adults. Even excessive shouting can damage a kid's sense of security and contribute to mental health and behavioral issues down the road." Anyway, I mean, one of my early memories is of our dad screaming at Jan, and that affected me profoundly as a little boy. Anyway, some profound takeaways from this book. I am going to resolve to communicate better with my wife, maybe learn how to approach some of these relationship issues that we avoid instead of resolving. One additional thing, this book actually gives me hope, even at age 54, to find something that that would really make my life complete. What would that thing be? I'm not sure, but it seems like I'm always looking for something to complete me. Whether it's an art project, or building a guitar, or learning to play the guitar, or learning to fly an airplane, or something like that. It seems like I've always been searching for something like that. And this book actually gives me a little bit of hope about that, because I've kind of given up on that. Last thing I'm going to say is this book reminded me of a song by Diamond Rio, one of my favorite country bands. Took my wife to see Diamond Rio in Ogden, Utah a few years ago. It was a wonderful concert. They were amazing. But they did a song called Kentucky Mine. No, Appalachian Dream. It's called Appalachian Dream. Kentucky Mine is in the song, but that's not the name of the song. It's Appalachian Dream. I'll link the song in the description. All right, there's my book review. I hope you enjoyed it.